Hi everyone, my name is Sofia Perea, and with my classmate Micaela Sedan, we are going to analyze two literary works. The first one is called To Live in the Borderlands Means You by Gloria Anzaldúa. Now let's read together the poem, okay? Here we go. To Live in the Borderlands Means You by Gloria Anzaldúa. To live in the borderlands means you are neither hispana, india, negra, española, ni gabacha. Eres mestiza, mulata, half-breed. Caught in the crossfire between camps, while carrying all 5 races on your back, not knowing which side to turn to, run from. To live in the borderlands means knowing that the Indian you betrayed for 500 years is no longer speaking to you, that Mexicanas call you rajetas, that denying the Anglo inside you is as bad as having denied the Indian or black. Cuando vives en la frontera, people walk through you, the wind steals your voice. You are a burra, buey, scapegoat, forerunner of a new race, half and half, both women and men, neither, a new gender. To live in the borderlands means to put chili in the borscht, eat whole wheat tortillas, speak Tex-Mex with a Brooklyn accent, be stopped by La Migra at the border checkpoints. Living in the borderlands means you fight hard to resist the gold elixir beckoning from the bottle, the pull of the gun barrel, the rope crushing the hollow of your throat. In the borderlands, you are the battleground, where the enemies are kin to each other. You are at home, a stranger. The border disputes have been settled. The volley of shots have shattered the truce. You are wounded, lost in action, dead, fighting back. To live in the borderlands means to mill with a razor white teeth wants to shred off your olive's red skin, crush out the kernel, your hard pounder pinch you, roll you out, smelling like white bread, but dead. To survive the borderlands, you must live sin fronteras, be a crossroads. Before analyzing in depth the poem, I'd like to talk about the author for a bit, because her work was loosely based on her life experiences. Gloria Anzaldúa was an American scholar of Chicano cultural theory, feminist theory, and queer theory. Gloria was born to field worker parents in South Texas, Rio Grande Valley. After she turned 11, she entered the fields to work with her parents and siblings. When his father died, she was obligated financially to continue working the family fields throughout high school and college, while also making time for her reading, writing, and drawing. In 1968, she received a BA in English, Art, and Secondary Education from Pan American University and an MA in English and Education from the University of Texas at Austin. While at UTA, she taught a course called La Mujer Chicana, and this is where she began to notice the lack of material written for or about Chicana women. She also developed theories about the marginal, in-between, and mixed cultures that develop along borders. This poem is taken from the collection Borderlands La Frontera, The New Mestiza, published in 1987. It examines the condition of women in Chicano and Latino culture and discusses several critical issues related to Chicana experiences, for example, heteronormativity, colonialism, and male dominance. To start with the analysis, because we like order, we'll start with the title, To Live in the Borderlands. When you see the word borderlands, you automatically think of a geographical limit, right? Well, we can use that idea and put it into context. Here, our limits are two different cultures, the American one and the Mexican one. Those who can't fully identify themselves with either are left in the outside. The limits, the border. Here, our limits are two different cultures, the American one and the Mexican one. Those who can't fully identify themselves with either one are left in the outside, the limits, the border. Now, let's talk about the structure. The poem itself is an 8-stanza poem that's separated into an even set of lines, which go from 3 up to 8 lines per stanza, while not displaying a specific rhyming pattern. In most versions of this text, the first line is separate from the next 5. The following opening lines of each stanza are indented, a bit to the left and separated from the rest. Those first lines form the basis for a question: what does it mean to live in the borderlands? And the bulk of a stanza provides the answer. This outline helps to build up the stream of consciousness style of narration, in which the speaker moves fluidly through their own thoughts. The author used quite a few poetic techniques while writing this piece. I'm sure the ones you notice first, or at least the most notorious one for us, is got to be enjambment. Basically speaking, this occurs when a line is cut off before its natural stopping point, forcing the reader down to the next line quickly in order to comfortably resolve a phrase or sentence. Another thing we can appreciate through the text is the combination of English and Spanish. The speaker, who is likely the poet herself, switches back and forth between these two languages without warning. This was done in order to re-emphasize the larger themes of the work and the idea that one can exist between two cultures in a borderland, without wholly subscribing to either side, but rather belonging to this unique mix of the both of them. Now, because we really like order, we'll go through each stanza and analyze them one by one. Ready? This is our first stanza. We have some Spanish words. Hispana refers to women who speak Spanish and or are descended from a Spanish-speaking population. India, used to address indigenous women. Negra, a slur used to refer to women of color. Española, or Spanish. Gabacha, Mexican slang that means from the United States. Mestiza, women of mixed race, specifically Spanish and indigenous. And finally, mulata, that refers to someone of mixed black and white descent. Each of these labels can easily be turned into an insult, but the poet is pointing out that if one lives in the borderlands, they can't subscribe to any of these categories. Caught in the crossfire between camps is a metaphor referring to the mental space someone of mixed heritage must navigate between one side of the roots and the other. Carrying all 5 races on your back is another metaphor. The speaker, while not identifying only as one of these labels, must honor them because not doing it is disrespectful to their community. In the second stanza, we have a clear example of enjambment. We also have the term India again, and we have to add to all glossary the term rajetas in its original form. This word references a multicolored cloth, but, as we have seen here, it can also be twisted into an insult thrown at someone of mixed race. In the third stanza, we start with an opening line in Spanish. We also have burra and buey as examples of what one might be called by others. They translate loosely to dumb and axe. Ansaldúa uses personification to depict the wind stealing one's voice. This is an allusion to being unable to adequately or successfully articulate one's own thoughts. In our fourth stanza, we have many Spanish words. Chili, or how Americans call the sweet type peppers. Tortillas, it's a thin, flat pancake. made from maize flour, which can be eaten hot or cold, typically with a savory filling. Then we have Tex-Mex, which is a form of Mexican Spanish having elements of English and spoken near the border of Texas. And La Migra is a slang term for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. We didn't know what in the world borscht was, so we assumed you don't either. So here you go. Borscht is a sour soup common in Eastern Europe and Northern Asia that has a distinctive red color. In the fifth stanza, we have more metaphors. Resist the gold elixir beckoning from the bottle is used to allude to alcoholism and drinking. The pull of a gun barrel and the rope crushing the hole over your throat refer to suicide, obviously. The sixth stanza has another instance of enjambment. You are the battleground is a metaphor for the internal conflict between the speaker's ethnic heritage and the place they have been born into, and also the external conflict between both sides of a spectrum, the Hispanic and the American, and those who advocate for each of them. In the third line, king could be a metaphor for the Latino families that differ in the way they see themselves. The border disputes have been settled alludes to the resolution of that internal conflict and the construction of an identity. But, as the next lines imply, that resolution is shattered by our changing minds and times. In the seventh stanza, the poet uses male imagery in order to depict a mental stripping down and removal of one's identity and heritage. We also have the notorious contrast between the two ethnicities with the use of different colors, white and olive red skin. The fourth line, doesn't have punctuation, is also enjambed, forcing the reader to move through it quickly and helping to emphasize the violence and sadness in post-transformation. The eighth and last stanza is only 3 lines long and has the real answer to the speaker's drawn-out inquiry into what one needs to do to survive in a borderland. To live sin fronteras and be a crossroad alludes to not belonging to either side, to stay in between because we don't fit in a single category. Now, we will move on into themes. These poem themes are easily detected, right? First we have identity. Through the whole poem, we see the speaker struggle to define who they are. They don't see themselves totally reflected or accepted in either culture, which makes them question, if I'm neither this nor that, then who am I? The answer, that cost a lot of suffering, blood and tears, is a crossroad, where both sides meet, fluctuating between the American culture and their Mexican heritage. They are able to cross over from one identity to the next. This is masterfully shown with the use of transitioning between the English and the Spanish. The speaker never fully speaks English and never fully speaks Spanish. By doing so, they are able to merge their identities and cultures into one. They are able to live in both situations. They can transition from one identity to the other because both identities are theirs. Then we have racism and xenophobia. The hate and violence, both verbal and physical, that people of color are subjected to just because of their color of their skin and the place they were born into, is not of the likes of the white majority in power. But this negativity is also present in the Hispanic immigrants that refuse to associate themselves with this new and impure Americanized generation. And finally, we have depression and suicide. This inner identity complex and the violent environment surrounding this minority group could lead to a path of depression that ends in suicide, as illustrated by the fifth stanza of this poem. To finish, I'd like to say that while it's pretty obvious that this poem is a poster child of Chicano literature, we could also analyze it with a feminist theory. The speaker is clearly talking about a woman of color experience and how she is marginalized for being Hispanic and also for being a woman. The bit of both women and man neither and a new gender could also be analyzed with a queer theory, as it will mean not only the search for a cultural but also a gender identity. And now my classmate Micaela is going to continue with The House on Mango Street.